Welcome to Stay Home, Stay Focused. I'm Jack Moline. I'm the president of Interfaith Alliance, and my guest today is my friend Gurwin Singh Ahuja. Gurwin is going to tell us a little bit about his history, most importantly for our purposes here. He is one of the founders of We Are Sikhs. And before we begin talking about anything else, I want to ask you, Gurwin, what I ask everybody. How are you doing in all of this?
I'm doing good given the circumstances. A lot of things have definitely changed in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, none of which what I was expecting. But I think all you can do is take it in stride.
You're taking some time now to do a business degree. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right.
How is it taking classes entirely online?
If I was being honest with you, not that great. I mean, there's school. One thing I will give credit to the school is that they worked very hard to ensure that students could get access to their classes. But, like everybody else, no one was expecting it. So professors weren't necessarily ready to deliver a class like this in this format. But, we're all adapting.
And what are you focusing on that keeps you from obsessing over the necessities of this coronavirus?
Well, on one hand, I have to obsess over it because I'm a fellow with the Biden campaign. But the other thing is, when I was in school, I started a company called Salvos, which is effectively a sustainable retailer. And I've been reading a lot about climate change. I've been thinking a lot about the long-term impacts of the climate changing and how more pandemics could result that are like the coronavirus. So in a weird way, I'm tangentially, all of my work outside of school is very much related to what's going on. So I can't escape it, Jack. That's the bottom line.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about We Are Sikhs a little bit. And the first thing I want to talk about with you, Gurwin, is pronunciations. Americans have a tendency to pronounce the name of your tradition as Sikh, as in
Correct.
hide and go seek. But the accurate pronunciation is Sikh. Is that correct?
Correct. So the accurate pronunciation is Sikh. If you say Sikh, it's acceptable. When we came to this country, where a lot of Sikhs came to this company, it was much easier to tell someone it's pronounced Sikh because then it sounds like sick, like how everyone is.
Right. These days,
right now.
yeah. That's not the thing you want to say, right?
That's right. Now that we've kind of all become a little bit more cultural aware and sharing things about our communities, the correct pronunciation is Sikh.
So you'll help me with another pronunciation. A major Sikh holiday is occurring in the days ahead. And in an attempt to pronounce it correctly, I went online and got 4 or 5 different pronunciations.
Okay, got it. Yes. The pronunciation of is Vaisakhi, and what the holiday is about, it basically really reinforces Sikhism's commitment to equality and tolerance for all people. And that happened more than 300 years ago. And many of the signature things people associate with Sikhs today, like wearing the turban or our common last name of Singh or Kaur, is a reflection of those values of equality for all people and religious tolerance for all people and gender equality, most importantly.
So you mentioned another characteristic of the Sikh tradition, and that is that most people share one of 2 last names. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it ties in with the holiday. So I'll tell you a little bit about more background on the holiday, and I'll explain how the last names came into it. So roughly 300 years ago, the final guru, the final major leader of the Sikh community, Guru Gobind Singh, was very worried that Sikhs were, I'm messing up the pronunciation too. Sikhs were not fully committed to fighting for equality for everybody. And he asked his followers to give up their last names because your last name in Indian society often gives away what your caste is. And someone can tell what part of the social structure you're a part of. We didn't believe in the caste system. We believed that your life should be determined by your own merit. And thus, every male was given the last name Singh, which means lion, which is a very prestigious last name, no matter if they're from the lowest class or the highest class. And women, very importantly, and there's very major innovation, particularly at that time, were asked not to take their husband's last names and to maintain their own last name, Kaur, which means princess, like someone that is royal. So they could show that women have their own agency and that they are not property of men.
Is that connection between lion and royalty that we're familiar with in more Western culture, is that part of Sikh culture also?
I would say so, yes. I mean, I very much think we do it in a very similar way.
So there's been a proliferation of Sikh organizations, and we'll talk about the one you helped to co-found in a moment. There's been a proliferation since 9/11. I know
Yes.
you have a story about your own experience on that day, which maybe you'll agree to tell. But one of the things that I have noticed in my interfaith work is that most of these organizations are populated by people who are on the younger side. And I know there is an older generation of Sikhs in America. Is that a phenomenon that's just a coincidence of my perception, or is it accurate?
You know, now that I'm reflecting on it, it is fairly accurate that they are staffed by people that are younger. But I would make no mistake that the people that are funding these things, that are helping organizing behind the scenes, are very much a combination of younger and older. I just think that young people have more energy, so and the older folks have more money, so that's just how it works.
At least that's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about We Are Sikhs and how that came about.
Yeah, so the way it came about was in 2012. I was working on the Obama campaign, and a white supremacist went into a Sikh temple and he basically shot up the place. And 5 to 6 people passed away. And it was a very memorable event for me. One, because at the time, white supremacy isn't the problem that it is today. It was quite shocking, actually. And two, a lot of media coverage was starting to be focused on the community. And it was very clear from our spots on CNN or interviews with major outlets, their community was really not prepared to tell our story effectively in a way that can be understood by the broader American people. And I felt very strongly that this had to be the case because many Sikhs, as you pointed out, post 9/11, a lot of groups started popping up because there was a lot of discrimination because we have beards, we have turbans, and we are not explaining to people much of what this holiday is about. The reason why a Sikh has a beard, the reason why they have a turban, is because it's their commitment to equality for all people, not just us, all people. And that message was not coming through, and that was crystal clear through that event. So we started working with David Axelrod's firm. We started working with a very high-level pollster named Jeff Guerin, who was Hillary Clinton's pollster, and we put together a campaign to help share the contributions and values of Sikh Americans throughout the country. And actually, in fact, I would say if it were not for the Jewish community's involvement and from these very prominent Jewish political operatives, this campaign would not have gone very far. I think that we had 2 people in that generation that saw their parents, and in some cases even themselves, have to struggle through the same thing, again, in their life or a generation earlier.
Well, to paraphrase Robin Williams in Birdcage, you know what they say, where there are Sikhs, there are Jews. I'm sure it was a great opportunity for partnership between the 2 communities.
It was, yes.
Among the wonderful things that We Are Sikhs did was to partner with Funny or Die.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that was one of my favorite projects. So, when we finished the campaign and we ran a campaign in 2017, a a lot of the investment went to television ads, which are still very effective ways to advertise. But we had not invested enough in digital media, and the media landscape between when we conceived the campaign and when we launched the campaign shifted very dramatically. So we wanted to do a big project on digital media, and one of the best ways to reach people, particularly my age, is through comedy and on the internet. And so I knew some folks from Funny or Die that ran the campaign for President Obama when he appeared on there many years ago. And they loved the concept. And I thought, what I wanted to communicate through the piece was obviously not only our values, but what I saw is a social commentary on being able to productively talk about differences and diversity, because it felt that if you watch the piece, and I'm sure you can share with your followers, that's quite hard now. And a lot of people are afraid to talk about it because they don't want to be called out or put down. And the dynamic of the piece kind of touches on that. And really the undergirding thesis of the piece is that we're all human beings, that we should give each other grace. And it's okay to make mistakes and ask questions.
You talk about it very astutely and very accurately, but what we miss in a conversation like this is the humor. It skewers political correctness. It skewers presumptions of privilege. It skewers our own reluctance to address what are innocent and obvious questions because we're afraid it's going to make us look bad. It's really worth seeing.
Yes, it's an award-winning piece.
I don't have the capacity to put up a website now, but what should people search for if they want to Google it?
Just put Funny or Die, We Are Sikhs, SIKHS. Funny or Die, We Are Sikhs.
I promise you it will, it'll be a worthwhile, 7.5 minutes is
no, it looks like about 3 or 4 minutes. It's short.
Oh, well, I laughed hard enough that I had to stop it a few times.
Yeah.
One of the central practices of the Sikhs is hospitality. You can, I understand, show up in any Gurdwara around the world and they'll feed you. And in fact, when the World Parliament of Religions met in Salt Lake City a couple of years ago, it was the Sikh community that provided the catering. But in this age, we're so isolated from each other. How does a Sikh individual fulfill a commitment to hospitality in an age like this?
That's a good question. I think by following common sense and following the rules, it doesn't allow people to die. So stay home and don't run around outside and do crazy things. But that's sort of a joke, but also pretty serious. But to that point, a lot of the community is continuing to serve by keeping these kitchens open and delivering the food to those in need. So delivering them to hospitals, delivering them to workers on the front lines like truckers or people that work at retail stores that have to remain open. So they're finding ways to serve in the conditions that science tells us that we need to meet.
If I wanted to emulate that value, but I didn't have access to a food kitchen and my children wouldn't let me go out of the house to deliver food to other people, what would you suggest to me that I could do to lift up this value?
The purpose of this value really that you're talking about, which is Lungar, the essence of it was really a provocative. I'm gonna give you a long answer to your question.
Please.
Yeah, was a provocative statement of equality. It keeps coming back to equality. Because again, in Indian society, when the Sikh religion was being formed, people of different castes could not sit and eat together. So in the Sikh faith, people sit on the floor to show that no one is higher than another. And people of different castes eat together and they just show that they're equal. And I think the way to do that in today's day and age is, I'm struggling to come up with one thing you can do at home, but if you have to go to the grocery store, thank the person that's working at the grocery store. Thank the person that has to stay and deliver the mail. because for many, many years, I think, and I think it has definitely seeded into our politics for sure, is there's a feeling that people that do work either with their hands or manual labor is not as valued as people that sit on computers. And we're seeing that the actual essential workers are the people that were feeling that felt like their lives were not respected. So I think the way you can show equality in today's day and age is by thanking those people. Because they're quite literally some of them are putting their lives at risk.
And we Americans sometimes, I think, believe that we invented the notion of radical equality in a society. But this is really something that has been part of Sikh tradition from the beginning, and without a lot of the adjustments that Americans have had to make over the years because of other factors that separate people in our society. I want to ask you about one more thing before we wind down here, and that is the project that you and I were able to work together on when you were
Yes.
in the Obama White House, Know Your Neighbor. Can you talk about
Yes.
that a little bit?
So Know Your Neighbor is one of my favorite projects that I've ever worked on. And it was a leading partnership between major civil rights organizations in America and the Obama administration, because I think all of us, even before our politics started going haywire, recognized that there was something wrong with the social fabric of our country. And we got together to ask the administration to start proactively seeking solutions to heal these divisions. We had the White House and the Department of Justice go all around the country, not just big cities, places like Alabama, places like Mississippi, to host town halls and conversations with leaders to figure out what's wrong in those communities and come up with productive solutions. And we ended up changing policy at the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, the EEOC, and many other agencies because of this. And I do think if the election turns a certain way, there is a high possibility and a definite need to revive such a program.
It was terrific, and it had all sorts of iterations. I don't know
Yes.
that it ever became a household name, which was our aspiration in the beginning, but it
Right.
certainly reached into plenty of households all over the country. So Gurwin, the last thing that I ask each of my guests before we go is to suggest something that will inspire or engage the people who are watching and listening, and take their minds away from the very necessary preoccupation with protecting themselves and their loved ones. What will inspire and engage someone in these times, in your opinion?
You know, what has inspired me is the collective action that we've taken as a society in very short order. And I know there's exceptions to that, but I think for the large part, once the information got out, millions of Americans followed through. And I think what that shows is there's a lot of challenges that are coming down the pipe for our country. Whether that be climate change, whether that be the insane amount of income inequality that we all have to deal with, and it shows that we do have the capacity to do big things. Because I do think, someone that's been involved in politics for many years, and I know Jack, you have as well, in various ways. I think there was a little bit of a question: is can America do big things anymore? At least in the last half decade, and I think, as terrible as this situation is, we do have a capacity for collective action on a very large scale. And if we want to, we can tackle some of the biggest problems that this country faces, and that will require collective action, actually not just on a national level, but a global level. So.
And I think people have some time to give that some thought and make some plans right now.
Yeah.
Gurwin, Singh, Ahuja, thank you so much for being my guest today. To the people who are watching and listening, thanks for being with us again. And as always, stay home and stay focused.
Thank you, Jack.